Welcome to Creative Excuses. Today we begin a journey through Baldur's Gate 3 with a nice and chocolatey twist. You see, this is not the vanilla game, this is Chocolate Edition, a massively rebalanced version of Baldur's Gate 3 that I made as a sort of all-in-one mod for people to rebalance their game for a fresh run with just a single click. In this mod, classes are changed, subclasses are changed, spells are changed, feats are changed, and a few pieces of gear are even changed. And if you want to see all of those changes, you can check the description of this video for the mod notes. There are only 54 pages of changes, so I'm sure you'll make it through them in no time, right? What follows in the rest of this series is a full honor mode run showcasing some of my favorite changes and features, and a few more excellent mods. Before we begin, I want to thank BK2950 for the $20 in support of the mod. That means a lot to me and is a massive support for this mod and channel. I also want to thank the mod testers that helped me out when first making Chocolate Edition, especially Bree in my Discord server. Your bug testing has been invaluable because of just how many changes have been made, so thank you. Now, without further ado, let's meet our heroine. This is Mira, the half wood elf. She's something of a mercenary herself, but at her core, she's a good guy who's fighting on the side of those in need. The thing is, she just wants to be paid for doing so, making her more of a hero for hire than anything else. Mira is a ranger, accustomed to fighting magic users, giving her the ability Concentrated True Strike, a bonus action ability that will give her advantage on attack rolls against the target for 2 turns at the cost of her concentration. Her weapon of choice as a ranger is no weapon at all, instead it is the cantrip, Ray of Frost, which plays well with her subclass, but we're jumping ahead a little bit. Mira has also proven herself quite resourceful as a scavenger on her journeys before. She has the passive Wasteland Forager, which lets her find 8 good berries that heal 3d4 health each, once per long rest. Thanks to her affinity for magic, Mira's stats look like this. She's got middling dexterity and constitution, average intelligence, high wisdom, and enough charisma to get by. While out on one of her adventures, she was kidnapped by mind flayers aboard a weird tentacular ship. She had a mind flayer parasite shoved into her eye hole, but when dragons and Githyanki attacked the ship, her pod was broken open, offering her an opportunity to escape. Once out of her pod, Mira quickly searched her surroundings and found the Man of Demonetization. Mira failed to extract the Intellect Devourer in his head, and so she put the man out of his misery. Further along a hopeful escape route, Mira was ambushed by a green frog lady, Lae'zel the Githyanki, who offered to fight alongside Mira for the time being. She agreed, and together they fought off a few small imps. Mira took 2 Rays of Frost to take one out, while Lae'zel clobbered 2 imps with her longsword in short order. Just a few steps away, Mira pushed a button and woke up 2 thralls who promptly attacked the companions. They went down quickly though, but it was a rather rude awakening. In the same room, Mira found a damsel in distress, Shadowheart. Mira freed her from her pod so that she wouldn't die a horrible death on this mind flayer ship, much to Lae'zel's disappointment.
We've wasted enough time already.
Shadowheart shared some of her cleric magic, a Shield of Faith, with Mira, which let Mira cast Shield of Faith as a bonus action for the rest of the day, granting 5 turns of increased armor class for each cast. That is going to be useful in a fight. In the next room, the 3 companions fought off a bunch of lowly fiends with Rays of Frost, longsword strikes, teleports. Wait, what? Shadowheart has the ability to teleport through the shadows at will as a bonus action, which allowed her to traverse the room and even steal the champion's flaming sword with ease. Once the enemies were cleared out, excluding the seemingly friendly mind flayer who thought that we were thralls, Shadowheart connected the tentacular transponder, which launched the ship from the Hells to a new realm where Mira fell to her... not death? Something saved her. Maybe it was that Shield of Faith? In the morning, Mira woke up on a beach with the worm still in her brain. Time to search for a cure. Just a few feet away, Shadowheart recruited Mira into her party once more, which granted enough experience for them to not hit level 2. Unfortunate really, because a few Intellect Devourers were killing a few Tiefling fishermen within earshot. Mira jumped into action using True Strike and a Ray of Frost to slow one of the Devourers down, while Shadowheart snuck up and used a Guiding Bolt to put the hurt on another. On Shadowheart's next turn, she used a Sacred Flame for a little damage. Mira took a hit, taking her down to half health, but she used one of her handy good berries to heal up. One of the Intellect Devourers then died to Shadowheart, but the other killed the last fisherman before Mira could take it out. Unfortunate, but the fight did grant enough experience to hit level 2, where Mira unlocked a couple new ranger tricks. First, she unlocked new spells that she can cast with Instinct alone, a new ranger resource for casting from a special martial-focused ranger spell list. She also got to pick 2 new ranger spells, Entangle and Expeditious Retreat, giving her a little crowd control with her spell slots and enhanced mobility thanks to the free action dash. For her Instinct spell, she picked up Hail of Thorns for a powerful area of effect weapon attack. Mira also snagged the defense fighting style for an extra +1 to her armor class and unlocked her first feat. She took Light Armor Master, granting her an additional +1 to her armor class, initiative, spell save DC, and attack rolls at the cost of always having to wear light armor to receive those potent bonuses. With her middling dexterity, that may prove to be a defensive challenge. Shadowheart, though, and any other Origin companions on this run start out with their own unique 1-level classes. Shadowheart started out as a Daughter of Darkness, able to teleport through the shadows, use a couple of Paladin and other Cleric spells, and use daggers to great effect. She multiclassed out of her 1-level class and into Trickery Domain Cleric, gaining an additional spell slot and a few new prepared spells. The companions then found more Intellect Devourers and softened up the fight by blowing up this explosive Nautiloid container. From there, it was light work to take out the remaining Devourer with a couple of melee strikes. Our hero and shadowy companion proceeded to explore the crashed Nautiloid and then ran into a group of seeming bandits or looters at an ancient ruin nearby. They seemed a little hostile, so Mira used her mediocre powers of persuasion to successfully scare off the group.
Nobody's getting any damn cheese! Now move it!
Mira then doubled down on her persuasive skills to distract a few tieflings enough to rescue Lae'zel from a trap, but at Shadowheart's advice, we did not recruit the Frog Lady. She was just a bit too rude and condescending for Mira's taste.
Such tiring mediocrity.
Up ahead, Mira and Shadowheart ran headfirst into a large battle between goblins and a couple adventurers at a gate to an apparent settlement. The famous Blade of Frontiers made a dramatic but stylish entrance, and then the battle began full scale. Zevlor rallied the friendlies with a blow of the battle horn, granting everyone temporary hit points, and then it was the party's turn. Shadowheart stabbed the first goblin she saw, and Mira used an offhand attack to finish it off. She then used her action to soften up the targets below with a Hail of Thorns. The adventurers and man named Will took turns smacking and being smacked. Shadowheart then tried and failed to stab another goblin, but managed to push it off a cliff for 0 damage. Mira played Overwatch and used True Strike and her 1 ice arrow to soften up the goblin's leader and hopefully make it go prone. The next turn, Shadowheart did a little damage and then used the shadows to reposition next to a weak goblin, while Mira continued to ice the goblin leader. Quickly, the friendlies took the upper hand in the fight and finished off the goblins, warg, and bugbear without any casualties. Inside the gate, Mira tried to talk down the bickering human and tiefling, but even with Shadowheart's guidance, she failed, and Zevlor clocked the racist man right on the chin. That's a fine result. From Zevlor, Mira learned there was a ritual being completed that was about to cast the group of tiefling refugees out into the wilds with goblins running around. Mira agreed to help in exchange for some payment. A good deed and a paycheck are all she needs. Mira and Shadowheart spent a little time inspecting the grove's defenses and found a bugbear assassin that made it up the wall. Mira entangled the would-be assassin while the party chipped away at its health and movement with Sacred Flames and Rays of Frost. The bugbear did get one good whack in on Mira though, but a Wrathful Smite from Shadowheart and a couple stabs took him down for good. Mira was rewarded with a soul coin in exchange for saving the tiefling's life.
It's worth a fortune.
Nearby, Mira met a merchant who informed her of a healer, Nettie, who might be able to help with the Mind Flayer parasite, though we didn't really tell the man about the parasite itself. We spent a little time trading, selling what loot we found so far, and bought a padded armor +1, a nicely upgraded piece of light armor, bumping our armor class up to 16. We even dripped it out with a nice light blue armor dye. The real prize of the Grove, though, was recruiting Will, the famed Blade of Frontiers, to the party. He may be a superhero, but he also has a parasite, and so he is in need of a healer too. He also told us that he could use some help taking out a demon though, which seems a small price to pay to recruit a superhero on whatever misadventure this all turns out to be. When recruited, Will earned level 2. Will multiclassed out of his Blade of Frontiers single class level into an Oath of Devotion Paladin, unlocking the Channel Oath resource, and with it, the ability to smite, dealing quite a lot of damage on his melee attacks. At the Grove's makeshift prison, Mira managed to stop a rogue tiefling from executing a goblin prisoner, saving a life in exchange for some information about the goblins in the region. They seem to have a mighty healer in their ranks, and they worship some unknown god called the Absolute.
Let my
my daughter go right now!
On the way to find the healer Nettie and to talk to the Grove leader Kaga, Mira learned of a child that was being held by the druids for some reason. Thanks to Mira's help at the gate, Kaga apparently wanted to talk, so even though the others were turned away, we weren't. Inside the Grove's inner chamber, we found Kaga threatening a child with imprisonment for stealing the idol necessary to their ritual, the Rite of Thorns. We barely managed to talk Kaga down by pointing out that the snake may kill the child. Meanwhile, Wrath, an apparently respected druid, asked our party to rescue the Grove's real leader, Halsin, a bear-shaped druid captured by the goblins.
I will open the treasures of this grove to you, even if the circle forbids it.
We also spoke with the healer Nettie about our condition and told her the truth, which was lucky. She looked ready to kill us if we'd been lying, but we did have to promise her we would swallow some poison if we felt like we were turning into a mind flayer. Finally, we spoke to Kaga, who requested we help the refugees leave before the final prayer of the Rite of Thorns. From there, we spoke with Zevlor, who resolved to kill Kaga if necessary to protect his people if someone wasn't able to take out the goblins' leaders, who were orchestrating their entire army. This could be sticky to resolve. Up above Zevlor's office cave, we ran into a few more bugbear assassins and had quite the jump scare. Shadowheart snuck into range and threw out her last guiding bolt for the day, while Mira used an entangle followed by a hail of thorns. In the end, the three companions combined their magical might to take out the brutes without much issue. Completing the encounter, though, rewarded enough experience for everyone to hit level 3. Mira hit level 3 in Ranger, allowing her to pick a new spell and a subclass. She first picked Hunter's Mark, an ability that's going to pair really well with her Swarm Keeper subclass. Hunter's Mark will allow her swarm of moths to deal an additional 1d6 damage, even when attacking with a spell like Ray of Frost. This will, at times, be a staple combination in combat. Shadowheart hit level 2 in Cleric, earning a feat and a powerful class feature called Invoke Duplicity, which allows her to channel her divine relationship to roll a deception check. If she passes the deception check, she can cast another spell of any level that turn as a free action, kind of like Action Surge. If she fails the check, she can only cast an extra cantrip that turn. She also unlocked her first feat and took Skilled, granting her proficiency in Deception and Perception, and also setting her charisma to a minimum of 15 so that those invoke duplicities are much easier to get off. Will, on the other hand, hit level 2 in Paladin, unlocking an additional channel oath charge for smites or abilities, spell slots for casting Paladin spells, and a feat. For his feat, he took Durable, increasing his constitution by 2 points and allowing him to full heal every time he short rests. After the level up, the group encountered a few humans standing over a dying dwarf. The encounter turned sour after a brief conversation about their god, the same one as the goblin back in camp.
Brenna! Kill her!
Mira almost took out the hostile woman with a single Hail of Thorns and Hunter's Mark, and Will cleaned up the kill with an Eldritch Blast. Shadowheart took out the man with a Guiding Bolt and an almost duplicitous Sacred Flame. Not bad for a single turn of combat. Soon the party was long resting for the first time. Mira had a chat with her companions and then crawled into bed for a well-earned night of rest. Everyone was wary of the tadpoles and turning into a mind flayer, though. It was not a great sleep. Inside a cave nearby, the companions found a group of goblins and quickly took them out from range with their spells.
Fall by my hand.
Mira's mage hand did have some fun throwing boxes off this cliff at the goblins, though. When the fight ended, Mira found this unconscious man on the ground and tried to wake him up by throwing a potion at him. Her swarm of moths mistook this throw action as an attack, however, and killed the man. But then the potion brought him back to life as Schrodinger's halfling. He was at once dead and alive, and very much confused. Outside the cave and up a small cliff, the companions ran into even more trouble, a big group of spiders. It wasn't anything the group's magic couldn't take care of, but it was an intimidating sight. After dispatching the spiders, a bougie devil showed up and threatened us, so we took dinner off his table and told him to leave us the hell alone.
Not easily rattled, I see. Good.
Further up the road, our heroine ran into the adventurers from the day before, who advised us to turn north instead of dying to goblins along the path we were on. Pretty good advice, especially since it led us to the best boy, a white, fluffy dog in need of an owner. We convinced the dog to follow us if he needed to, convinced that he would show up later on. From here, the party backtracked to the beach and those ancient ruins again. They climbed down inside a hole and then started to clear out the remaining bandit looters, but Will fumbled his dramatic entrance this time and fell prone instead of getting the drop on these guys. That made the rest of the fight significantly harder. Shadowheart managed to kill the barbarian, but then missed a key spell on the leader, all while Will remained paralyzed on the ground thanks to being prone from his fall and then ensnared by the enemy ranger with no movement speed. Mira and Shadowheart managed to pull the fight out though with a combination of spells, stabs, spiky balls, and a bunch of good berries. At least the loot was worth it. Deeper in the ruins, the party took out several undead skeletons only to meet a talking skeleton called Withers. Withers wasn't hostile, even though he spoke slow enough to kill.
We will see each other again at the proper time and place. Farewell.
With loot in hand though, Mira and friends traveled back to the grove to sell it and resupply, picking up some nice new weapons like a hunting shortbow which gives an extra cast of Hunter's Mark. The challenging fights of the day left everyone tired, so we took a long rest and found Withers the zombie boy there. Apparently he can resurrect the dead and he's willing to hang out, which sounds pretty handy. In the morning we woke up ready to rock and headed back out to where we met the adventurers. We figured the town next to the adventurers was probably a goblin ambush, so we snuck in through the forest beneath it, and oh how the turntables. This time we assassinated a bugbear with a quick 1-2 stab and some deadly moth bites. We were convinced there was an ambush waiting for us here, but we couldn't figure out where from, so Mira sent a sneaking mage hand to f*** around and find out. With the ambushers revealed, Mira, Shadowheart, and Will climbed up on the roof of this house and started blasting. Mira assassinated the goblin with 2 quick hits, while Shadowheart gave it an honest try and did a little damage. Once the battle started in full, Shadowheart moved through the shadows to focus on a goblin on the lower level of the house, while Will and Mira cleaned up the roof and took pot shots across the way. Everyone took a little bit of damage and ate some of the good berries that Mira had been harvesting each night to heal up. Before long, the fight was over and the looting began. Elsewhere in the village, the companions ran into a few more goblins and quickly took them out. This fight, however, looked a little spicy to just walk up on, so Mira surprised everyone with a hunter's mark from sneaking. Will led with a Divine Favor concentration spell to give his weapon attacks a little extra oomph, and then he one-shot a goblin with a stab. Mira, on the other hand, followed her hunter's mark with a Hail of Thorns for some huge damage on the goblin with the big axe. Shadowheart finished off her first turn with a nasty Inflict Wound critical hit that did 34 damage, killing the goblin she targeted. She then dumped her Channel Divinity and hit the lead goblin with a Toll the Dead. And suddenly, the cowardly goblin was surrendering to Will. The lead goblin took off running, but his companions seemed to be Schrodinger's goons, both dead and alive. If I had a gold piece for every time that happened, I'd only have 2, but it's weird that it happened twice. My wife is laughing at me.
That was funny. You made a joke.
I have no idea if I can hear your laughter in the background. I'm gonna leave it in, whatever. Mira freed the deep gnome that the goblins were torturing on the windmill and received his pack full of goodies in payment. The main reward was a new pair of boots, the Speedy Light Feet, which grant lightning charges each time you dash while in combat. These might pair really well with our Expeditious Retreat spell, but will they ever beat a Hunter's Mark? I'm not sure. Beyond the Blighted village, the party jumped over a bridge and ran into a hyena turning into a gnoll. Being a good ranger, Mira put the animal out of its misery, but another hyena a few feet away started running for help. Will started the fight by throwing a Void Bulb to pull the hyena back, and then Mira followed up with a Hail of Thorns for some area of effect damage. Shadowheart then teleported through the shadows and used a Scroll of Burning Hands to finish blowing up the group. On his next turn, Will then killed the remaining hyena, putting the last potential gnoll down before it could do any damage. Back to the west, the companions found themselves at the edge of a raid on a large estate. There were drow and goblins and an ogre all fighting together against Flaming Fist from Baldur's Gate. The group was going to have to fight their way to the center to find out what was going on. The team took turns firing on the goblin at the edge while the Fist and the drow fought each other. Will had taken a nasty hit, so after he killed the goblin, he used Lay on Hands to heal himself a bit while another round passed between the Fist and the raiders. The majority of the fight was so far away, only Shadowheart could really reach it in a single turn, thanks to the shadows. She threw out a Guiding Bolt and then hid behind the house. Mira, on the other hand, used the free action Expeditious Retreat to get some extra movement speed, and then used the bonus action Dash on top of that for even more to match Shadowheart's movement. Another round passed and the Fist were taking a beating. Will dashed in and used his bonus action Blade Ward to protect himself from more damage, but the next round between Will and the lady's turns resulted in another Fist's death. A drow wizard decided to have a bit of a laugh and ran out to Shadowheart and Mira. The wizard thunder waved and then sent Mira flying, but Shadowheart stood strong. Mira was a little upset, so she launched a flaming arrow at the wizard, which dealt some extra lightning damage thanks to those lightning charges and extra sources of damage. And then Shadowheart finished off the wizard with a level 1 guiding bolt. Will healed up on his next turn, only to take damage right away after, and soon another fist died to the ogre's smash. The fight looked about even still. There were 3 drow, 1 ogre, and 3 flaming fist still standing. Will used a level 1 heroism spell to grant himself 5 temporary HP each turn for the next 10 turns, as well as the effects of Bless, making his attacks more accurate. Shadowheart then healed up one of the fist while Mira tried to take out the sniper drow with a hail of thorns, but missed, only dealing a little damage on the explosion. The ogre then killed the fist that Shadowheart just healed, which was devastating. So Will smited a drow with a Blade's Flourish bonus action. On the next turn, Mira, Will, and Shadowheart managed to take out all but 1 remaining drow, while only a single flaming fist remained alive, but everyone was in bad shape until Shadowheart moved through the shadows and then healed herself with a level 2 Cure Wounds. When the fist moved into the house with the drow though, she took one last hit from the drow's bow and died, leaving only the companions remaining. The party killed the last drow, but the battle felt lost, not won. Our heroes did not feel very heroic with the good guys all laying dead around us. Anyway, we looted the place like real heroes and found a trapped Counselor Floric upstairs in the burning building. Will saved her and revealed he knew her and that he was actually the Grand Duke's son, Baldurian royalty. Will's dad had been kidnapped by the drow before we arrived and he was being dragged to Moonrise Towers. As a reward for saving the Counselor, she gave us the Sparky Points, a trident that grants the wielder lightning charges when they land an attack. I have a feeling this is going to be useful for someone very soon. With all of the loot in hand, the party traveled back to the grove to pawn it off on someone who surely needs it more than we do. They don't need food or anything at the grove, right? We managed to pick Will up a +1 rapier on the shopping run too, which was quite a nice upgrade. After a quick travel back to the burning estate, the party found another group of gnolls and took them out with their remaining resources for the day. Mira led with an icy arrow to freeze the ground, while Will blasted away and Shadowheart missed. The rest of the fight was short work though, just 2 turns to end the gnolls thanks to a nice inflict wounds and Will's smite. Finishing the fight granted Will and Mira enough experience to hit level 4, but Shadowheart hadn't been inspired enough, so she was a little behind. As a level 4 ranger, Mira gained more instinct to cast her Hail of Thorns with, and a new feat. For the new feat, she took Spell Sniper, which brought her wisdom up to 18, giving her extra accuracy, while it also increased the range of many of her spells and let her unlock 1 additional cantrip. We chose Bone Chill so that in the future, if we need to stop someone or something from healing, we can do so. Spell Sniper also reduced the number needed to roll a critical hit with a spell by 1, making critical hits twice as likely right now, even without advantage, which is fantastic. Will took a 3rd level in Oath of Devotion Paladin, which granted some new, always prepared spells like Sanctuary and Protection from Evil and Good. It also granted new channel oaths like Sacred Weapon, which would increase his attack rolls with a weapon of his choice by his Charisma modifier, and he unlocked a Turn Undead effect. After a long, hard day of fighting and adventuring, the party packed it in for the night and took a long rest. When the party woke up, they met a Paladin of Tyr who asked for help slaying a devil, likely the same one that Will has been hunting. The party agreed to help and then looted the cellar of the abandoned toll house for some easy gold. Mira did talk with the dead body in the other room of the toll house though, and found out that the man was a warlock pacted to Zariel, the archdevil, and that was a little suspicious. The party then ventured down the cliffside to find Karlach, the supposed devil burning up and bleeding. It turned out that Karlach was infected like us, and she was also a victim of the Blood War, not a willing participant. She was an escaped warrior slave, not a villain. After convincing Will she wasn't an evil monster, Karlach offered to join the party if we killed the Paladins of Tyr with her, who she claimed were actually Zariel's lapdogs. Given the dead warlock we talked to just a few minutes ago, that seemed pretty reasonable, and Shadowheart approved.
I like her. She looks like she could throw me over her shoulder and carry me to safety, should the need arise.
When Karlach joined the team, she leveled up all the way to level 4 to match Mira and Will. We started out her leveling with a respec to change her ability point distribution to something pretty weird like this. 13 strength, 14 dexterity, 14 constitution, 11 intelligence, 16 wisdom, and 8 charisma. It's a super weird split, but it'll eventually make sense, I think. Karlach's starting class is Heart of Fire, which gives her access to a basic rage, but when she rages, any fire damage that she deals becomes Hellfire, empowered by her Infernal Heart. It ignores resistance and immunity to fire damage. She also gets an additional 1d4 fire damage on her attacks. For the next 3 levels, Karlach took Monk levels until she unlocked the 4 Elements subclass, granting her spells that use key points instead of spell slots to cast. She took a range of spells, but especially 2 fire spells, Fangs of the Fire Snake and Sweeping Cinder Strike. These will be the core of her damage for quite a while, letting her deal excellent, unresistible fire damage while she's raging, because these spells don't actually get blocked by raging. Excellent. 4 Elements also has a few other tricks though, like the ability to naturally regenerate key points by attacking with a melee weapon, and it has the ability to bind a weapon and attack using wisdom instead of strength or dexterity. For her feat at level 2 Monk, Karlach took Weapon Master, focusing on tridents, letting her add her proficiency bonus to attack roll with tridents. But it reduces her attack rolls with all other weapon types by 10 due to a lack of practice. Just ignore the giant axe on her shoulder. This Karlach has been using tridents forever, and so she's going to use the Sparky points that we just got. With Karlach and the rest of the team all kitted out and Shadowheart still a level down, the party climbed back to the top of the cliff for a chat with Anders. Karlach called out the paladin, and with a little inside check, we realized he was indeed lying. Anders was the bad guy all along, and he dropped that mask really quick. When the fight broke out, the enemy ranger shot a special arrow, but everyone made their saves and no one seemed to have taken any damage. Meanwhile, the wizard of the enemy party seemed to have an aneurysm. She didn't do anything, she just climbed some boxes, and I was not mad about that. Will went after the buggy wizard, while Mira and Karlach went after Anders and the ranger. Karlach raged and then blasted Anders and the ranger with a Sweeping Cinder Strike. Mira dropped a water bottle and tried to use an ice arrow to break it and to hit Anders at the same time to create a large ice surface. It did not work. We only got a small ice surface, but we did get some solid damage with a critical hit, which was very nice. But as soon as it was Anders' turn, he super smited Karlach, bringing her down to almost no hit points with his 2 attacks and 3 different smites. Shadowheart jumped in and healed Karlach a little bit, and then missed a level 2 inflict wounds on the ranger, which was pretty unfortunate. On the next round, the wizard remained bugged out, not taking any actions at all, and the ranger ensnared Shadowheart. Karlach missed an attack on Anders, and then Will bugged out like a madman, which bugged out Mira. Basically everyone was tripping this fight. Oh, and the wizard is somehow back up there after she moved away. No idea how that happened. But that fixed though. Will moved in on Anders and threw out an Eldritch Blast to soften him up. Karlach then landed a beefy Fangs of the Fire Snake to kill Anders, while Mira remained bugged out, unable to do anything. Whatever the wizard had infected Mira. Shadowheart freed herself from ensnared and used her once per combat Blade Ward to keep herself a little safe. With Anders dead though, and the wizard a little dumb, the rest of the fight played out pretty quickly. After the fight, Karlach turned up the heat and ran around, setting the entire place on fire. Meanwhile, the wizard. The experience from the fight let little Shadowheart level up and join the adults of the group. With a 3rd level of Trickery Domain Cleric, she learned a bunch of new spells, but the most powerful ones are Hold Person, which all clerics get, and then Mirror Image and Shadow Blade from her domain spells. Nearby the toll house, the party found a rock slide and its cause, a giant earth elemental which they decided to fight just for the experience of it. With low movement speed and Ray of Frost hitting it most turns, the elemental never really had a chance, and when it died, it dropped some very nice gold. The companions then returned to the grove where they sold off their loot and met Damon, an infernal smith who told us that he could fix Karlach's Heart of Fire, an infernal engine instead of a beating heart. He just needed some supplies though, like infernal iron, and sent us looking in the Blighted village. Before leaving the grove, the team decided to explore just a little more and stumbled upon a bard in need of a shoulder to cry on, and a young boy being lured by harpy sirens at the beach. Shadowheart used a silence outside of combat and then a sanctuary to protect the boy and the group from most of the luring song. Though the group members did get lured a couple of times when they were outside of the silence bubble, the fight went relatively smoothly and the boy was saved. Back in the Blighted village though, Mira and friends found the infernal iron right where Damon said it would be. Mira also got a nice short sword upgrade in there in the form of the steel forged short sword, just a +1 sword. But while searching the smithy, the group found a cracked wall with a massive infested cave behind it, and they decided to explore a little because why not go into the cave full of bugs? In the cave, they found and quickly dispatched a group of ettercaps and teleporting spiders. Deeper into the cave though, Mira snuck up on a massive phase spider matriarch, apparently a drow wizard of some sort that had experimented on themselves and transformed into this thing. Mira used acid arrows to destroy some of the phase spider eggs, but some had already hatched, so she tried using a long-range snipe to pick one off and accidentally aggroed the entire cave of spiders. The battle that followed was huge. Shadowheart, Will, and Mira took turns taking spell pot shots at spiders, but Karlach had to use special arrows to deal any ranged damage because she was almost out of key points without a short rest. The special arrows would often deal damage even if she missed the attack thanks to her expertise with a trident and her lack of practice with anything else. Soon, the group was pretty surrounded by spiders, but the big matriarch never traveled all the way into the cave. Mira did almost die though, so Will had to use his last spell slot on a sanctuary to protect Mira from being attacked. Karlach used a dash and the Fangs of Fire Snake to take down one of the medium-sized spiders, and then Shadowheart took the high ground and cast a mirror image to let her absorb a few attacks a little bit more safely. On her next turn, Mira ate a good berry to heal up and used the Fairy Fire to give the group advantage on attacks against the big spider, not knowing that it would remove the sanctuary on her, and so she took a massive critical hit from a baby spider while retreating. The next round, Shadowheart unleashed 2 big guiding bolts on the matriarch using Invoke Duplicity, while Karlach blasted the ground with a flaming arrow to take out the baby spider without triggering the matriarch's legendary action. The next turn, Karlach melee attacked a baby spider, triggering the legendary action and became cocooned in web, almost certain to die unless cleared by acid or fire damage, so Will threw an acid vial at Karlach, but she made her save and it didn't clear the effect. The next turn, Mira attacked a phase spider thinking she was out of range from the legendary action, but she also became cocooned. It was very possible for the fight to go sideways from here with only Will really looking healthy. He tried and failed to heal Mira with a bonus action potion break. Shadowheart, on the other hand, healed herself up and then spent her last spell slot on a sanctuary to protect herself. The matriarch then knocked Karlach down while the rest of the team healed up Mira. Karlach succumbed to her injuries the next turn. She died. But the rest of the team lived and dumped everything they had into the matriarch. Mira used Hail of Thorns, Will finally got up in melee distance and started smiting. Shadowheart kept healing, and even though the matriarch raged the next turn, Will kept smiting and the team kept the damage coming. A few turns later, the whittling away finally came through and the spider matriarch went down, but boy was that a hard fight for terrible loot. And poor Karlach, she died. Anyway, we resurrected Karlach with a nice scroll, explored the cave a little more without finding much of interest at all, and then took a much needed long rest. Except at camp that night, Will the human became the human fiend hybrid because his mistress came calling. Mizora, the devil he was pacted to, punished him for not killing Karlach by turning him into a devil, or devil-like thing himself. He doesn't have a tail, but he does have huge horns. Shadowheart seemed into the new look, though.
I must admit, the new look is a little dashing.
The next day, the team got Karlach's heart fixed up, picked up some more supplies, and started venturing toward the goblin camp. Along the way, in the Blighted village again, they found 3 ogres that had moved in. One of them seemed especially intelligent, and Mira managed to strike a deal with the ogre. They would fight for Mira in exchange for the flesh of the fallen. While a little grisly, it was a small price to pay for 3 ogres on your side. With the upcoming assault on the goblins to rescue Halsin and save the refugees, this would be a welcome boon. From up on the ridge outside of the village, the party saw the goblin camp. Mira decided to cast a mage hand out there to scout out the area, but a goblin guard didn't appreciate it. No matter though, the mage hand shoved the peeing guard off the cliff, no problem, and then checked out the area. This was going to be a lot of goblins to kill. A hop, skip, and a sneaky jump later, the party snuck behind the front lines of the goblin camp ready for their assault. As they approached, the whole party had a vision of 3 chosen of the Absolute and commands to follow those 3. But Shadowheart's mysterious artifact pushed the voice and the commands away. Shadowheart seemed defensive about the matter though, so Mira let it rest. This is no time to chat. Assaulting the goblins' massive camp awaits. Thank you everyone for watching the first half of Act 1. This act is just so big, even in the vanilla game, but when you add in all the extra encounters from that wonderful mod, it gets even bigger. This is my first of these videos for Baldur's Gate 3, so let me know what you liked and what you think I can improve on. I am specifically looking for feedback on how I commentated the fights. Did I say too much? Did I say too little? The next episode of Mira's series will come out very soon. Until next time, I'll see you all in the next excuse.